and welcome to Back in My Day. We are now going up to Michael O'Byrne's house to interview him. Hello and welcome to Back in My Day. Today we are interviewing Michael O'Byrne. Hi Michael. Can you tell me about your family?
I was the middle of three children. My brother was older and my sister was younger. My brother went to college and he became a priest. He went to St. John's College in Waterford. And when he was ordained a priest, he went to America. Because of his poor health, he was unlikely to survive in the climate we have here in Ireland. And my sister then joined the Good Shepherd nuns in Limerick, and she was up there for a good number of years. And since then she's now retired.
And what about your parents?
Again, my mother lived to be a ripe old age, a decent age. She was 84 years. But I never knew my father because he died when I was only 3. His health wasn't good and he died at 52 years, I think it was.
And anything about your grandparents? Do you remember anything about them?
Well, you see, because my mother now was young enough, she was the youngest of her family. And again, the story was like my father's family. There was quite a few of them there. I think there was 9 or 10. And two of those brothers of my mother were priests also. And one of them spent his life in California, in America. And the other man served in the diocese here at Waterford and Lismore. And I suppose his most notable achievement, if that's what it is, he was the man who welcomed Ronald Reagan to Ballyforeen when he came there. And I don't know how relevant it is, but it's funny. He had been in a car accident a short time before, so was using crutches. So they had him sitting down outside the priest's house in Ballyforeen, outside the front door, when the Reagans were about to leave. So they came out then to shake hands with him and all that, you know. And the Irishman broke out in them anyway when he shook hands with Nancy Reagan. And what he said to her was, "Good luck now, ma'am, and safe home."
A good Irish tradition.
You know, you said to yourself, she's only going to Mitchelstown,
Yeah.
you know. It managed to draw a smile from Nancy's face, and that was a difficult thing to do.
Yes.
Do you have any good memories, like when you went to the beach with your brothers and sisters? Did anything funny happen? Or
To the beach, is that what you said?
yeah, if you went to did you go to like the beach or go like for a walk in the woods or something?
Well, you see, transport was rather scarce when I was young. And it was the end of coming towards the end of the war years. And during that time, there were no private cars on the road because petrol was very scarce and very dear. And we had to depend on England for those things. And so there was rationing of petrol. You could only buy a small couple of gallons per month. So you could only make necessary journeys.
Anything you mentioned about cars? Do you remember who had the first car in this area? Who got the first car?
Well, certainly like my father would have been amongst them. You know. He had a baby Ford. It was, as I recall, I think it was registered about 1938. Before that would be before the start of the war, and I think basically that it was in '39 more or less that Ireland became involved. There was John Kennedy. He lived up in Derrygrant. Dermot O'Brien lived in your time.
What was the car itself like? How did you start it in that compared with cars now?
Oh, sure.
It must have been a very different type.
We had to. They would be very, very primitive. Is the only word describes them. You know, not too easy to start at all because the cars at that time. It was difficult to start. You know, as the years went by, they got better and better and better. You know, we often I saw the car being towed by a working horse, and the horse pull it, you see, and then you could start it. The same as you shove it now.
And who else had cars around then? You mentioned Kennedy. Who else would have had cars?
Well, a lot of the time you see when all the private cars were off the road anyhow. And it was a long, long time, and if you wanted to go anywhere you had to hire a hackney car, as they call them, taxis now.
Michael, can you tell us about roughly how many families, people lived here when you were young?
Not in this house in particular, because this house was only built for my father. The old house that he lived in was down in the yard, and in my memory it was only used as an outhouse for where some of the workmen might go to cut up the timber for the fire on a wet day.
Were there any houses back towards Loch Ryan from here?
Yeah, there was the Costigan family now. There was probably 5 or 6 in that family anyway. A lot of the country people moved to towns or cities to get employment, and then they married and lived in those places. It certainly applies to the Costigan girls. On this road here now you only had Larforan's house below, which was a Duggan family that was there in my time, in my young days. Okay.
What are the main changes in your area over the years?
What about electricity now? That would be, when did that?
Yes,
what do you remember about that?
The electricity came here 1950, but as a matter of fact, at that particular time, there was nobody living here. We were scattered. And the ESB rented the place as an office while they were putting up the electric lines, you know, the poles and the wires and all that. That was in the early 50s, 50, 51, around that time. It opened all the doors, so to speak, you know, because once you had electricity, well, as well as having light in every room in the house and things like that. And you could have, you know, bit of power for lamps that you could see outside the house, you know.
What about heating then?
Oh yes, of course, that brought the heating as well. But in the early days, times were still not very good. You know, wages were low and everything was cheaper. So people didn't have a lot of money. And they had to, as we used to say, play it by ear. I'll just put in initially now, maybe into the houses you needed electric plugs. Now, if you had one or two of them around the kitchen, you could plug in an electric kettle and an electric iron, and that might be the extent of it, you know. Agriculture changed quite a lot, you know, because it was to do with the coming of the electricity, because before that milking machines had arrived, but they were driven by a little petrol engine before the rural electrification came around.
What games and pastimes would you have played at home when you were young?
Well, we had a playing pitch, as you can see, in front of the door there. Myself and my brother, and we used to often go out there with a hurley each and took the ball around from one to the other. And my sister used to attempt to join us, but it never lasted very long because the two macho males, you see, and didn't think it's a good idea. But well, one very amusing thing happened. On Sundays, my mother used to get the pony tackled up and head back towards Ballylouby Parish, where she came from. She had a lot of relations, a lot of them, and she had visited them all. But John and myself were out there and we hooking the ball around, and she arrived out there with the pony and trap and get on board. So it was drop the hurleys and headed off the road. But the following day, when we went to pick up the hurleys, there was only one. John's hurley was gone. And some of the boys at school told him that there was a van of the itinerants down in McLofty, and that they saw him playing hurling, and that they thought it was like John's hurley. So he decided to go down and investigate, and sure enough, the hurley was in the hands of one of the itinerants down there. So he politely asked him, like, give me a few shots with it, you see, and he gave it to him, and he ran away home with his hurley. It was a good one,
Good one, yeah.
Oh, stealing a hurley out of the lads.
Steal it back. I like it.
Yeah.
With justice.
But
Any other games or pastimes you used to play then?
well, you see, in Grange now, any of the hurling, and we did play a bit of hurling and kind of football without only a rubber ball. But it all had to be organised by ourselves. And we remember playing a game against the lads from then Bairntown, what's the name of the school there?
Up in Rathkeevan.
Rathkeevan, yeah. Some of the lads up there, they'd make contact now with the like of John Keaton and Dick Keaton, you know. So I remember on a couple of occasions anyway having a hurling game above a field that's known as the Stream there above and down from Keating. So. And they were mightn't have been an annual fixture, but there was quite a few of them played.
Regular enough, yeah.
Yeah.
And did you play anything other than hurling at school?
We used to play rounders, which was something you could play properly, because at the crossroad there it was there was good room there. The girls in those days had their playground was the cemetery around the church. At playtime, that's where they had to go. And stay within the boundary of the walls.
Did boys and girls play together, or did they play separately?
Separate.
And what games, would girls play different games to boys? Like what games would they play?
Or they'd be very separate. There was no game at all. No mixing with the boys and the girls. The girls were, the graveyard was their playground. This is a dangerous place.
I'd imagine so.
There was a big cross there on a plinth. Yes, between the main door and the road. And there was I think 2 steps around it, you know, here and up here. And I suppose the cross was just ordinary plain wood. But it was supported by two big bars of iron coming from one at this side and the other at the other side. And they were bolted onto the crossbar of the cross. But one day, one of those iron bars fell down and hit a girl on the head. Well, no, it kind of skinned her. She could have been killed. The old cross was kind of gone rotten, you know, and they used to keep painting and painting. It was a near one.
Did the girls play then, or what did they do at break times?
No, I suppose this kind of hide and go seek thing, you know, what could you do inside in the churchyard, you know, with all the obstructions.
Yeah.
But they amused themselves some way. You know.
And after school, would you have played any games in the castle?
No. For a good few years now, my brother and myself, we used to trot on over to Loch Ryan. And John Hannon would be around my same age as me almost. And lo and behold, he had an uncle, a priest, that bought him a football, which was, so we were able to go and play football with a real football, not a make-do one, for as long as it lasted.
And Babs Keaton's mother's house was a good card house, was it?
Oh, it was, yes, it was. Then,
Or the home place in Dan and...
yeah, well, then you used to enjoy it. You see, there was nothing for people to do really. Only play a few games of cards. You know. People didn't have transport, only bicycles and things. And you'd have to, you know, you just couldn't get about.
You played yourself for Tipperary, you were obviously did very well at hurling and football, just...
Well, I was a nearly person.
Mm.
That is to say that I was nearly good enough. And it meant that I did get to play a few times with the county junior teams and things like that. And I played, funny enough. And it was only recently I thought about it. I played in a couple of league matches in football. Played in St. Clonmel one day now, playing football against Clare. And I played in Limerick, Gaelic grounds, against Limerick. I don't know, was I on from the beginning or did I come on, but I played it. And the paper the following morning gave me credit for scoring a goal for Tipperary. And it is debatable who scored the goal, but nobody, only myself and the fellow I was playing on knew. But
Right.
we were in the square, like, but legally there. But the ball spun, and I bet the goalie. He thought naturally it was going here, but the minute it hit the ground, it did a kind of a. From the spin that was on the ball, I don't know, was it your man's toe or mine? Because I was prone nearly like this, and your man had me choked.
We'll give you credit for it anyway.
Well, they put in the paper, the man else to give it to me.
We want his history records it. The history will record.
So what was life on the farm, Michael?
Well, my farming was, I turned over at an early stage to tillage rather than cattle and cows and things. It was at the time, in days gone by, farming was generally a bit of this and a bit of that. You know, people would maybe have 10 or 12 or so cows and some sheep maybe and cattle, and then have some crops like wheat, barley, oats. You know. But as time went on, that changed, and people tended to concentrate on maybe one particular farm. Like dairy now, for instance, there. When I was young, the people would have 10, 12 cows and maybe 5 or 6 cows. Whereas nowadays people have as many as 100 cows or 200 cows in some cases.
How are the crops grown and harvested?
Well, I had a full range of machinery. Like other than, there was only one occupation that my neighbour John Hanlon used to plant the corn. Now I got a corn drill myself as well, but sometimes it was handier to get somebody else to. So the weather was bad, you know. But it was an easy life, you see. It was easier than the dairying was a 7-day week. So that wasn't for me. Plus the fact that in the early days we didn't have water. The only water we had was a pond, and it was way in one part of the farm. Until the time as we got piped water.
Tell me about the trashing day.
The which?
The trashing day.
Thrashing days, well, the thrashing days were a thing of the past when I was in Chile's butt, but I can well remember when I was a young fella here, and that time combines hadn't been invented, or if they had, they were over in America or somewhere. They weren't in this country. And there you had this, it was a big occasion, the thrashing day. Depending on how much corn you had, you might get in the thresher and get finished in a day. But if you had more corn, then it would be 2 days. And you'd have the practice was that the local farmers would all help in, you see. And when the threshing would be here, all the neighbours would come themselves or send a man or whatever, because you'd need about 20 people minimum for the threshing. Because you see, you had to handle all the sheaves, and fork them up on the top of this mill and all that. Whereas when the combine harvesters came, well, it was a one-man job. You go out there and you just, with the combine, and sit up and drive it on. And at the end of the day, you would have the combine would have cut the crop, and the grain would be separated and would be bagged. And then later on again, the bags were eliminated. There was a tank on the machine, and the grain would flow into the tank. And when the tank was full, you would auger it out and put it into a trailer and bring it into the mill, local mill, or whoever was buying the grain. So it became more or less almost a one-man job.
Where did you bring the grain from here now?
Well, we used to go to Care, because Care mills were functioning at the time. And later on, the local co-op, the Mitchelstown co-op, they had took over the grain bringing Care, and we used to bring the grain in there. Nowadays, it only goes down as far as Brett's in Ardfinnan.
And had you a good celebration at the end of the day after all the work?
Well, I tell you, that was to do with the old-fashioned way when you had this threshing. Because it was customary to have a supply of Guinness for the workmen. So the customary thing was to buy a quarter cask, you know, and tap it below, and you'd have to stop the operation a couple of times during the day then for the lads to slake the toast.
The quality of the work would improve as the day went on.
Can you tell us about the combine harvester?
Now, the first thing I tell you is that it hasn't moved out of there with a good number of years. But it was a good machine. I had it for, I'd say, about 10 years. But unfortunately, the machines, as time went on, they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and more modern. And a machine like that now would be antiquated.
Do you remember where you bought it?
I'm pretty certain that it would have been bought from Barlow's in Clonmel. They were the agents for Class Combines.
And what would they have cost?
Well, of course, they were very expensive, but I would have bought that and it was second hand. Probably in the region of 20,000.
Can you tell us about the old churn?
I certainly never used it for what was invented for, because it was a milk churn that people would use to transport the milk to the local creamery. And that was before modernisation took over, and now it's all bulk tanks. It goes straight from the cow into the bulk tank, and the lorry comes and collects it. Whereas in those days, when that churn was new, the farmers would have to bring the milk to the local creamery in a churn.
Remember what you used to make with the milk?
Well, we only sent the milk to the creamery and kept a certain amount for the house, and it was just to you needed milk for your tea, and that was before the local store was selling bottled milk. It was straight from the cow. Yeah.
Very few farmers with castles. So could you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I'm not an expert, but I do know that there was a period in time when there was a lot of castles built in Ireland. And in fact, there was a small grant, small by today's standard, for building a castle. They got the princely sum of £10 to build a castle. But I suppose it was relative, like, for the times that we're in it, you know. But a lot of people come here and they think when they see a castle that there was battles fought here or something. The truth is there weren't. The castle was just a big house, but it was a fortified one. And it was built with that in mind, that you couldn't, anybody couldn't overrun you there.
Can you show us some of the parts of the castle?
Yes, yes. Now all this was the living area of the castle, and you can see these keystones here, and they were there to support the floor in the next bit. And the second row of keystones up there, they supported another one. So you had kind of 3 levels. Now, all these things were all designed so that you could defend yourself in the castle. That's why the windows are so small and tidier when you get down here, so nobody could break in. Now, I just draw your attention to that space up there, because that, I'll show you how people got into it. They had to be dropped down there. That's a kind of a dungeon. At least they couldn't get down. They couldn't get out of it yet, because that hole wasn't there, you see.
The cow.
And
The cow was
Well, you see,
further up, yeah.
you see, the whole thing was designed like that you could defend it, you know.
You see, this bit
And
here is to defend now. If you show
This
this
is
as
the very
well.
first port.
If you got through the door.
You'd have the
Well,
defence
Put it
there.
on there now.
I see, and
So
so you could start defending at that point, because that stretches right back along here for a nice little bit. But we had a cow that came up here, and you might struggle to find your way out of here now, but the cow found her way, and she went way up here. Why, I'll never know, but she did. There you go. Yeah. His lordship doesn't. He doesn't like. He doesn't like up the castle. Get up, Ivan. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty dangerous place, because all that wall would have been completed at least up to there, and of course, as time went on, fellas just came and knocked away the wall. They wanted some nice dressed stone to build the wall or things like that. But a cow came up here, and we saw her, and there was 2 workmen here at the time. I was only young, and they brought her over across there, made her walk over, and tied her there for the night. And set about the next morning then trying to get her down out of here.
That was a big operation, I
A
suppose.
big operation, yes. She was a young cow, and she had recently calved within a week. And they brought up the calf in the hope that she'd be tempted to follow the calf down. But that didn't work. And even before, like Ned O'Connor got to the man, he was there down on his knees and he's trying his best to encourage her in here, but nothing happened. But eventually then on the next morning, when they failed, she didn't follow the calf. They eventually brought up a bucket of water, by which time she was very thirsty and she was tempted to follow the water back. And that's how they got her down all in one piece. But talk about high notions for a cow. You see these things here now?
Yeah.
That was done by some Corbogo fella that went to the trouble of bringing up black paint and a paintbrush and painting the steps. And I've forgotten what was written there, but it wasn't any addition to the base. But,
I wonder if I can see my house from
Have you?
here.
Well, all those houses there, no, they're all built along the side of the road, the Clonmel-Finnan Road. And other than that, you wouldn't notice unless you saw chaos passing by. But see, all of these castles, they were built in such a way that you could see one from each one could see the others.
So you could see from here to Nicholastown
You
Castle,
would,
and you could see to Lochloher.
you
I'd say.
see that Luger
is over in
on
this
a
direction,
clear day.
over here. I
It's
think, yeah.
set up on that
Lochlower
high
Castle.
ground there, you know.
And could you see Cahir Castle from here on?
No.
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 Couldn't see as far
You
as
will
that.
see, Cahir Castle now would have been a different type of castle altogether. And it wasn't built up on a height at all, you know. Oh yeah, that's good. The Galties will be heading back off there. All the way
Galties,
back,
yeah. And over in this direction then into what? Knockmeal Downs, is it?
Knockmeal Downs, yeah.
All those mountains there, Knockmeal Downs. And coming over this way then to the Cummerers, I suppose, is it?
Cummerers, yeah.
And I think there's the Monavullah Mountains down around Newcastle, I think then, so all of those ones there.
Very good.